to the meeting, the Governance and Audit Committee meeting, the 18th of May. If we can take apologies for absence first, please.
Apologies from Councillors Cyril Anderson and Andrew Stevens, and also from Jason Garcia, Audit Wales.
Thank you. Any further apologies? No? If you can move on to agenda item 2, any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest, please? No? Thank you. We can move on to the minutes of the meeting that took place on the 20th of April. If we can take them page by page for accuracy and stop me if there are any issues, please. Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. If there are no issues of accuracy, can we have some hands up to approve those minutes, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, Paxton. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike White. Thank you, Mike Lewis. Thank you. Take the meetings approved. Agenda item 4, we can welcome Adam to update us on the terms of reference for the Governance and Audit Committee. Before I invite you to comment, Adam, can I just thank you for your work with producing the revisions to these, the terms of reference, and just to let members know that I have been looking at the SIT for guidance on the Governance and Audit Committee to make sure that they are complete and representative of what would be deemed as a model. So if I can hand over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Paula. Just like to say, as always on these things, it's a team effort. I can't take all the credit, as always, supported admirably by all the team in terms of getting the specialist bits in here. The purpose of the report really presents an update to the committee terms of reference as a result of the Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021 and the SIT for Guide for Audit Committees, Practical Guidance for Local Authorities and the Police, which is the 2018 edition. You may recall that previously on the 9th of March, Tracy did present an amended terms of reference with regard to some of the changes that could automatically be undertaken utilising the powers that Tracy has under the Local Government and Election Wales Act. But this goes a stage further and brings about more of the best practice and more of those recommendations, which does require going from here on, assuming it's approved today, we'll go to the Constitution Working Group and then on to full council for ratification. So if I can draw your attention, please, to page 8, which is Appendix 1, all changes have been tracked, and depending on your screen, they should be in blue, but they may be a different colour depending on some of your settings. But you should be able to see all the track changes of each of the items as it goes through. I don't propose, Chair, to go through each of those. I'll take it as read. But happy to either take questions or any amendments that members may feel is appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Can I invite any comments, please, from members? I can't see any hands up. In that case, we've been asked to review and approve the changes to the terms of reference for Adam to take them to the next stage for Cabinet and Council. So can we call for a vote on accepting this paper, please? Okay. Councillor Peter Black.
4.
Julie Davis.
4.
Councillor David Helliwell.
4.
Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Terry Hennigan.
4.
Councillor Paxton Williams.
4.
Councillor Peter Jones. Don't think he's in. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, accept.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
Yes, accept. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Chair.
4.
Councillor Sam Prichard.
4.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
4.
Councillor Mike White.
4.
Thank you. It's approved.
Thank you very much. The terms of reference have been approved. So Adam, if you can progress taking them to the next steps, I'd be grateful for that.
I will do, Chair.
Thank you. If we move on to the internal audit annual report, this is obviously a key report for Simon to present. Just to position the paper for members, I met with Simon and Ben regarding the opinion that's described in the paper at section 7.36 with regards to the reference to the SIPFA guidance around the possibility of limitations to the opinion, which Simon has kindly explained to the committee members throughout the last 3 or 4 meetings, that would be a possibility. I am now content that the opinion reflects the position using that guidance and making reference to that guidance. So thank you for your considerations in the comments that was made on the initial draft, Simon. I'm grateful for that to you and to your team. So if I can invite you to summarise the paper, obviously take it that the paper's been read, and then I can ask members to comment. So hand over to you, Simon.
Great, thanks, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just to give you a bit of an indication first, the report does reference the Q4 monitoring report, which was due to come to this meeting, but because of the agenda size, that's been deferred to the 9th of June, just in case there's some confusion there as to why the Q4 report's not come before the annual report. And obviously, as the Chair's indicated, my opinion feeds into the AGS later in the agenda, hence it had to come to today's meeting. So if I just run through the summary of the report, this is basically a summary of the work done by the team in 2021. I mean, obviously the members have had the monitoring reports throughout the year, so they're aware of the issues that the team has faced throughout the year in terms of working from home, access restrictions, etc. But we have put other things in place to try and get as much of the plan completed as possible. So, as highlighted in 2.8, the team have successfully completed all of the fundamental audits in the year, with the exception of business rates. Members are aware as to why that's not been completed in the previous monitoring report. As of the 31st of March, we completed approximately 52% of the audits on the plan, with an additional 8% in progress. So overall, about 60% of the audit plan had been completed or was in progress as of the 31st of March. During the year, 99% of the recommendations made were accepted by clients, and a full list of the audits that were completed in the year can be found in Appendix 1. Members have also been made aware that we were unable to complete a lot of the individual school audits in the year, but we introduced 3 thematic audits instead to compensate to cover the key risk areas in those schools, which included procurement and unofficial funds. So if we take into consideration the completion rate and the key risks that were covered with the other work completed in the year, we were able to complete around 68% of the original plan, which isn't ideal, and it's a little bit lower than previous years. But, you know, compared to other years and given the situation we were in last year, I think it is a fairly good position to be in, and I thank the team for their efforts throughout the year. Throughout the year, we did follow-ups, as shown in section 3. So 6 follow-ups were completed on moderate reports. And again, committee have had the updates on the outcome of those follow-ups throughout the year. The team used a set of performance indicators, as shown in section 4. We achieved all of the PIs except for PI1, which was the completion rate of the plan, as explained previously, and average cost per direct chargeable day. That's primarily because the number of days chargeable had been reduced due to secondment and a slight increase in costs in the year on last year. I'm also required to undertake a quality assurance programme on an annual basis, as shown in section 5. That forms both an internal review and an external review. Members might be aware we had our external review back in 2018 by Cardiff Council, which confirmed that we were broadly compliant with the standards. On an annual basis, I have to undertake an internal review of compliance with the standards against an application note from SIPFA. That can be found in Appendix 3. To conclude that, I can state that we were 99.4% compliant with the standards this year. So nothing major has changed this year to previous. So we are broadly compliant. So as shown in 5.7, the results of my internal and external review show that the Internal Audit Department is compliant with the public sector standards. I'm also required to state the independence of the team, and Section 6 outlines how we are independent within the organisation, as members will already be aware. So coming on to the key part of the report really, which is Section 7 on page 23 of your pack, which is the Chief Auditor's opinion. Based on the amount of work undertaken as shown in 7.4, 95% of the audits completed in year were of a high of substantial assurance rating, which is a good level of assurance and is a positive message. Of the 14 fundamental audits that we've got on our system, as of the 31st of March 21, 11 of those fundamentals have a high level of assurance and 2 have a substantial level of assurance. Members will be aware of the ongoing issues with accounts receivable, which continues to have a moderate report. But again, members have been having updates from that department throughout the year and will do so going into the next year as well. We weren't able to do business rates this year. Business rates had a substantial level of assurance last time. And we have undertaken additional work to provide assurance over the reactive work the team have done in the year. So despite the fact we haven't done the fundamental audit, we have covered their activities with the other work we've undertaken instead, in terms of our grant check-in and other assurance work we've completed. As members will be aware, and as the Chair's indicated, we have had some issues with risk management in the year, primarily in relation to the recording of control measures on the risk register. So that has been highlighted again in my opinion. Again, members are aware of the ongoing developments with risk management and ongoing improvements in that area, and I'm sure Richard will highlight that later on in the agenda. But yeah, as the Chair mentioned, there is guidance from SIPA, as highlighted in section 2.34 and in Appendix 6, which was issued primarily to internal auditors, leadership teams and committees because of the difficulties internal audit has had in delivering their plans over the COVID period. As the Chair has indicated, we've considered those scenarios and I have incorporated that into the Chief Auditor's opinion in section 7.36. Based on the work undertaken in the year, I don't feel there's a need to issue a limitation of scope in the aspect of governance or internal control. However, I do feel that the limitation needs to be made in terms of risk management and how embedded that is across the organisation. Again, it's not to say we don't have good mitigating controls in place. The issue that we have is the documentation of some of those mitigating controls in terms of our placing reliance on those. So if you refer to section 7.36, I conclude that the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and control is effective with the opportunity for improvement. This excludes assessments of how effective the framework of risk management is embedded across the Council as a whole, as we've only undertaken audit work on the risk management system and the Directorate of Resources in the previous year. These issues have been highlighted to committee in previous meetings and have been highlighted to the Deputy Chief Exec and the Strategic Delivery and Performance Manager. And we are intending to take that forward into 21-22 to develop the framework more robustly. The appendices then just provide members with more details. So Appendix 1 is the list of audits finalised in the year. Appendix 2 is the PIs. Appendix 3 is the assessment of conformance with the standards, some more detail there on the assessment. The Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme is in Appendix 4. And then the detailed PIs, Appendix 6. Sorry, Appendix 6 is the SIPA guidance in more detail in relation to the opinion. Yeah, and that's all, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions if members have any questions on the content of the report.
Thank you, Simon. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you and your team for the significant amount of work that you were able to do in very difficult circumstances. And, you know, hopefully as things move on, it'll be a little bit easier. I've got some hands popping up now, so I'm going to take some questions and comments from members. The first on the top I've got is Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate my thanks, Simon. Being an auditor for most of my working life, I know and I understand the difficulties and challenges you must have faced over the past year. So well done for completing as much as you have. A couple of questions, looking forward rather than backwards. The first one is in terms of the peer review. I've noted that the Welsh Chief Internal Auditors Group have decided to go for a peer review next time rather than an external review. And I was wondering what the rationale is behind that decision and whether Swansea will consider doing an external review at some time in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, and thanks for your support and your recognition as well. Yeah, we have discussed it briefly at the Welsh Chief Auditors Group meeting in terms of the proposals for the next round of peer reviews. Personally, I found it quite beneficial to have a peer review the last time. Obviously, Cardiff did it for us the last time, and they are going to rotate the authorities so that we don't have the same authority doing our review again, essentially. It does work both ways, because obviously I would then be doing a review of a peer authority as well. So it is beneficial both ways, essentially. And I felt it worked quite well the last time we did it. Again, that's something for discussion with committee, because obviously I think we need to get approval from committee and the chair and CMT in terms of our approach for the next time. It is very much initial discussions at the moment. Ours isn't primarily due until January 22, I think it is. So we do have some time to plan ahead. And again, we can take any considerations from members in terms of their preferred approach going forward. But again, I think from my previous experience of the last exercise, I think it benefits us to have an experienced chief auditor from another authority to do ours. And also then another authority would benefit from myself undertaking the review for them. So it does reduce cost as well, in case it's an external cost to having an external review. But yeah, I mean, that's up for discussion going forward, Julie.
Okay, thank you. And my other question, if you don't mind, I noted that some of the local authorities don't provide performance indicators for benchmarking. So I was wondering if the Welsh Chief Internal Auditors Group were looking to develop a suite of more meaningful PIs that every local authority will buy into.
Yeah, the PIs are a bit of a challenging one, to be honest, Julie, because given the time scales to get this report prepared and completed, I mean, we've got fairly tight deadlines for the accounts. So my opinion obviously has to go into the AGS, and there's quite a tight turnaround for this report. Some authorities take a little bit longer to get the PIs compiled, and they do eventually get them into the team to compare and benchmark. So because it's quite early on, we tend to see they do come back into drips and drabs later on in the year. I agree they do need to be reviewed, and they are discussed in pretty much every chief auditor's meeting in terms of are this irrelevant and do all the authorities record the same data. I mean, a lot of them don't record the same information that we do on our systems and on our Galileo system. And we're quite lucky here in terms of the amount of data we've got behind the scenes to prepare the PIs. So they are on the agenda at every chief auditor's meeting, and they are constantly under review. They haven't been changed for a while. We are sticking to the same ones that have been in place for a number of years.
I did recognise them.
Yes, they haven't changed a lot. But again, there are discussions underway as to how relevant they are going forward and whether they need to be amended for, to be more comparable with other organisations and other authorities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Mike White.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the earlier comments within the report, Simon, again, in regards to procurement and school fund, clearly these are the main two key areas which keep jumping out on us when we do the reports within schools. We did mention previously as well about the possibility of the education, sending out sort of guidance or which the plus schools could put into policy in regards to these two areas and the understanding of them for the schools to follow, and of course with the involvement of the governors. I know that obviously schools have now had their budgets out, and they've been very lucky this year to have quite a good settlement, and they would have had additional funds, so they would probably be looking at, when things get back to some normality, be looking at the school development plan on taking the programme forward. But just if possible, can you advise whether education of ramped up advice and guidance in regards to these two areas for head teachers to know that they've got to comply with?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Obviously, we did the thematic reviews were quite productive actually this year for procurement and unofficial funds. And as you recognise, those are the two key risk areas that the committee are aware of in the past, and again, it's probably going to be the same this year. The annual schools report is due to come in June or July, I think, so that'll give you more information on the issues we found in terms of the review this year. In terms of training, I'm aware that education and ourselves are currently updating the accounting instructions for schools, so that will be more detailed information for them to work from guidance, and that review is underway at the moment and they're being finalised. There is also a procurement guide being produced. I met with education last week actually to just run through some of the final details of the procurement guide specifically for schools, which mirrors our own accounting instructions, but in a school setting for them to use quite directly. And again, I think it's education's intention to repeat the training programme for schools once they have been finalised. Obviously, myself or the audit team will be involved with that along with procurement. So there is work ongoing behind the scenes, Mike, in terms of trying to increase training and compliance. Obviously, that will be monitored going forward, but there is an intention to refresh the training, shall we say.
Thanks, Simon. That's very helpful, because I know that, as I say, the schools that now would have had the budgets and would be looking to obviously implement the school development plan on obviously projects that they got in regards being supported by their budgets. Thanks, Simon. That's certainly very encouraging.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just really wanted to reiterate the thanks that you've already given to Simon and his team for the work that they've been doing in very difficult circumstances this year. And the full effect of COVID has obviously been felt in that respect. Obviously, the work he does is important. We know, obviously, just the 68% in terms of target, but that's a good result in terms of the situation, I think. But it's something that we would need to keep an eye on in terms of backlogs going forward. And also the extra work seems to be coming in terms of the risk management and the auditing of that. I think really the work that's done in this report is a real compliment to Simon, and I'll ask him to accept that and pass it on to his staff as well.
Thank you very much, Paxton.
Yeah, thanks, Paxton. I would just like to say thanks to the team as well, because obviously it has been very challenging for them to adapt to working from home. Despite the fact we were working from home maybe 1 day or 2 days a week, it was a massive culture change for them to be sat at home for 5 days a week and cope with the changes. So yeah, I will feed that back, Paxton, and thanks for your support.
I've just got Councillor Sam Prichard's hand. Sam?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to raise quite a similar point to Paxton's, really. In that I think from reading the report and from what you said, Simon, to me it seems like, you know, we'd like to do more. We'd like to have audited more, but I think given the circumstances, this is a very good report, and I think this is something that we can, as a council, be pleased by and be pleased with. And I echo, as Paxton said, my thanks to your team for managing to do that much under completely new ways of working and under different circumstances. I think overall this is an incredibly good report given the circumstances. The only two questions I have really, Paxton, are in terms of those, not Paxton, you, and the only things I have, Simon, in terms of questions, the two questions I've got are, in terms of those, the 40% that haven't been audited, are those going to be made sort of priority to look at in the next coming year? Because otherwise then it's, you know, there's a gap that we've not looked at and there's a danger that there might be issues there. So I'm just wondering how that sort of, you know, that 40%, when that will be looked at. And I was just wondering, and I know it's not really a key sort of identifier, but in terms of other local authorities, Simon, do we know, because this is unprecedented, isn't it? You know, the pandemic has really changed everything in the way that your team has worked. So I know it's not the be all and end all, but I am quite interested to what extent other councils have done. And in terms of, you know, are we an outlier, or do we fit, you know, well in terms of other local authorities, given that we've all been under similar pressures because of COVID? But overall, Simon, I think it's an incredibly good report, given, you know, the horrific year that we've had. I think credit to you and your team. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for the support. Yeah, in terms of the deferred audits, that 40%, the audits that we've deferred have primarily been the lower risk, or, you know, the ones that, and if they aren't lower risk, the ones that we physically have not been able to complete because of access restrictions. I've only really completed a review where we've been able to do enough of the assurance work to give an opinion. So if we haven't been able to provide that, then I've deferred the review. All of the work that's been deferred has been included on the 21-22 plan, where it's been deemed to be of a higher risk. Again, it's a case of balancing the resources to the risks, essentially, for the 2021 plan. So anything that is key or, you know, essential, I've deferred to include for review 21-22. In terms of timescales, again, access is still kind of restricted at the moment and has been. So once things start to relax a bit further, hopefully, touch wood, we can start prioritising those areas that do need site access and site visits. So they are on the radar and they have been included and they have been reviewed. So that's hopefully give you some assurance over those deferrals. In terms of local authorities and comparators, we did have a discussion on the challenges we were all facing in the last Chief Auditors group meeting. We are not alone by any means in terms of the issues that we're facing across the board. We are fairly lucky in terms of we were fairly easily set up for Agile early on. We were already set up with the kit before lockdown. So despite it being a big change, it wasn't a dramatic, you know, culture shock, essentially. I think, to be honest, all local authorities are in the same boat. They've all had access restrictions. A lot of their, from other local authorities, a lot of their teams were sort of redeployed into other areas. I tried to resist that for our team, and luckily it has paid off in terms of our completion rates. But I'm aware that other local authorities had staff deferred to track and trace and other COVID responses, so haven't had the resource that we've had to complete as much of the plan. So I think we are in a fairly strong position. I don't know the actual outcomes as yet, but I mean, I'll feed that back to committee in due course. But I'm fairly confident we are, you know, pretty good in terms of our performance in comparison with other local authorities.
If I could just come in there, I've had a look at Cardiff, Rhondda and Taff, and yes, they are comparable with the situation that Simon was facing. So I did spot Councillor Jeff Jones's hand up. Have you still got a question, Jeff?
No, it was really on the same sort of theme that Sam was actually asking, which Simon has actually answered anyway. Perhaps, you know, perhaps one particular thing, you know, COVID perhaps, well, has probably caused additional work. I can see the, you know, the better together audits and so on that are coming up. How are they going to impact really on your workload?
Thanks, Jeff. The Better Together essentially are replacements for the Sustainable Swansea audits that were on the plan previously. So the work that we're going to be doing with Adam going forward in terms of the recovery and transformation programme. Again, they are going to be quite large pieces of work, I think. So that's something we're going to look at taking part with later on in the year. COVID, I wouldn't say COVID actually increased our workload. I think it's sort of changed the way we've done the work. So despite we've not been able to do, site visits, etc. It's made us change the way we work, and it's made us far more electronic. So despite the fact we've not been able to do on-site testing, we have had a way around that in the year to still provide you with assurance. So I hope that's okay, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I've not seen any more hands up. So once again, if I could just pass on our congratulations for the completion of the amount of work that you've done. It's no reflection of the fact that you couldn't complete the 100% or more on the team. It's a credit to the fact that you did complete 68%. And you've also taken an opportunity to revisit the way that you've audited across the field. And I think the thematic reviews you did across schools, for instance, on procurement, is something that I'd like to see continuing in the future, because that was a very effective, more efficient way of approaching those audits. And it was identifying a thematic issue rather than report individually every school was having the same problem. So, if there are any opportunities to increase that approach, I think that would be worthy of consideration. And it certainly gave us as a committee more assurance that, there wasn't an isolated problem in one or other school. It was a thematic which could be supported by the council itself. Yeah. So if I can bring this matter to a close, we're asked to review progress against the plan and the opinion. Robert? If we'd like to take a vote to approve the plan moving forward to the full council, because obviously the contents of this plan and the opinion particularly forms part of the annual governance statement. So we need to be satisfied as a committee that we're comfortable to support that going forward. So over to you, Jeremy.
Okay. Councillor Peter Black.
4.
Councillor, Julie Davis.
4.
Councillor David Hennywell.
4.
Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Terry Hennigan. Yeah. Councillor Paxton Williams.
4.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, 4.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
4, and thank you very much for your work. Brill, thanks.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Chair.
4.
Councillor Sam Prichard.
4.
Councillor Leslie Bolton.
4.
Councillor Mike White.
4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can take that as approved for moving forward then to the annual governance statement and the council. Thank you once again, Simon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
If we can move forward to the draft Governance and Audit Committee annual report, again, which is a report that brings together all the work of this committee and the documentation that we've received and the assurances that we've received from officers of the council. I've tried to pull together in the forward the key areas that we've dealt with, the main concerns that we've dealt with, the assurances that we've received, the gaps. And I've also during the year undertaken an assessment of the effectiveness of the committee until we can get engagement from Audit Wales to do that formal approach to make sure that what was set out in the terms of reference at the beginning of the year, we've delivered and improved upon as we've moved forward during the year. I'm pleased to say that where we had gaps in a couple of areas, with the support of the Deputy Chief Exec and other officers of the Council, we've now had a number of the reports coming through that we were unsighted of in previous times. And again, my thanks to everyone concerned. I know the pressure has been hard for everyone, and it doesn't help when you've got a chair of audit nagging you for filling the gaps for the committee. But particularly pleasing to report that we had the performance management framework report, we had the partnership and collaboration details brought to the committee, and we also had the value for money and benchmarking updates, which were areas that we hadn't had before. We have to recognise that the risk management arrangements are still needing some improvement. We've seen the sort of firming up of the system to use that will be used, but the devil is in the detail, and that's where the focus is being undertaken currently. I understand the training that we were assured would happen is taking place next week, I believe, with officers of the council. So we should see some change in what we've seen in future risk management reports. I've also asked that we see the heads or the directors of the services on a rotational base, where we can challenge those directors and ask how they're managing risk, how they're dealing with the level of control to ensure that their objectives are being achieved. So that's all happening in the future, but all those tasks have certainly helped us to deliver against the terms of reference. With regards to the opinion, as I mentioned earlier, I've met with Simon and Ben to discuss the opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, it does reflect the limitations around risk management. It doesn't reflect the deferred audits, but I respect and accept the comments made by the Chief Auditor that he didn't think a limitations comment was necessary on the deferred audits, which I accept. The next stage for this report, if it's approved, is to go to the full council. So I wouldn't want to say any more. I take it that the report's been read, but I would open up to comments from members. But can I also thank everyone, every member of this committee for your commitment and your engagement at every meeting. We can't do this work without the engagement from all of the members, and that's certainly evident in every meeting that's happened during the year. So my personal thanks go to each and every one of you. If I can open up to comments, please. Any comments? No? Okay. We've been asked to review and discuss the contents of the report prior to it being presented to council. I think we need to take a vote
to approve
that going through to council. So I'm sorry to labour you with this again, Jeremy, but if we can take that vote, please.
Okay. Councillor Peter Black.
4.
Julie Davis.
4.
Councillor David Halliwell.
4.
Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
4.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
4.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Chair.
4.
Councillor Sam Prichard.
4.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
4.
Councillor Mike White.
4.
Thank you. That's approved.
Thank you. Could I thank again Simon and you, Jeremy, for preparing this report for the committee today. And just for members to be aware, I have asked both Simon and Jeremy to ensure that the Appendix 1 is the terms of reference that we've been working through during the period 2021 and the amended version. If we can move on then to internal audit recommendations follow-up report, and if I can invite Simon to take us through this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to let members are aware, this is just a standard recommendation tracking report for those follow-ups that were completed in Q4. It's fairly straightforward. It just identifies whether the recommendations were implemented as part of our follow-up work. This is in addition to the recommendation tracker for the fundamental audits. So these are the non-fundamental audits that were issued. So as you can see in the table in Appendix 1, the follow-up work undertaken showed that 100% of the recommendations had been implemented and were followed up in Q4. And that's basically it, Chair. That's 100% implementation rate for the follow-up work.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Any comments on this paper? This is for an information paper, so we no need to vote on that. Thank you, Simon. That's quite a positive position, isn't it, on the follow-up?
Yes, thanks, Chair. And just as I mentioned earlier, Chair, this normally accompanies the Q4 monitoring report.
Yes.
Normally come
Yeah.
together, but that one is due to come in the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. If we can move on then to the next agenda item, which is the corporate risk overview 2021. As I say, if I can invite Richard Rowlands.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an overview of risk during the fourth quarter. And as can be seen in paragraph 2.1 of the report, all the corporate risks were recorded as being reviewed at least once during the quarter. The new style report, which I first presented to the committee back in February, is attached as an appendix. Now, this report can be automatically generated through the risk register application itself, and this is part of the new reporting functionality, and that process is now complete, along with other enhancements that we've recently made to the risk register. A guide to the various headings within the new report that can be seen in paragraph 2.2. The report presents the corporate risks, and these are the most significant and overarching risks affecting the council as a whole. And these risks are identified and overseen collectively by the corporate management team each month, and each risk as a member of the corporate management team identified as a responsible officer. As the chair alluded to, in future, a member from CMT will attend the committee on a rotational basis to present on their risks within this report, and that will give the committee the opportunity to gain assurance directly from the directors on how their risks are being managed within their areas. Among the other items of information within the report, you'll find the risk title and the description, the overall risk level, which is made up of the likelihood and the impact of the risk occurring, the responsible officer and the control measures, which are the individual actions that the responsible officer has put in place to mitigate the risk. And in line with the annual governance statement and with the observations made by the committee, a workshop specifically on the risk control measures is going to be held with leadership team next week. And this workshop will be focused on helping responsible officers to improve the quality of their control measures. And that will supplement the guidance which is already available. And then we will follow that up by further support materials, including a video that we'll put together specifically on this matter to add to the suite of other videos and support materials that we've already produced during this improvement process. And if I may, Chair, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the officers that we've worked with during this process, but especially Gordon Wright in my team, who has worked with me and who has undertaken a lot of this work to put in place the improvements that we've made during what has been a very difficult year. And I'd also like to thank Adam as well, who has given us a lot of support during this period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. You know, you can't underestimate the amount of work that's been involved in getting to the point that we're at. And I am grateful to you, Richard, and the officers of the council. But it is a critical feature that needs to be addressed as sooner as we possibly can. But I'll take comments now from members. Councillor Leslie Bolton.
Thanks, Chair. Really just a positive comment. I mean, as you've just said, the amount of work that's probably gone into this, and I'm always one for consistency, and I'm very pleased that the sort of format now of each risk is going to be written up in the same way, whatever the risk. So all I really want to do is support Richard and his team for getting this all sorted, particularly for addressing the issue about making sure everybody fits in the control measures in a consistent way. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate my thanks because I know there is a heck of a lot of work has gone into to pulling the risk management system together. and I'm also aware that it's much easier to manage issues rather than understand the concept of risk management. But I would like to go down into the detail of the risk on a page that we've been provided with, and I'm just taking the first risk as an example. There are several there that the last update was July 2020 and the projected completion was September 2020. So as it stands, we've no idea whether the risk has been completed or whether the work is still ongoing. So I don't know whether you can help me with that, Richard.
Yes, thanks, Julie. I think this is partly to do with the issues around COVID during the year, where education were under some particular pressures, and also this was to do with personnel as well. Having the right person who has been allocated the role within risk management to help the responsible officer. We have updaters. We've recently had a new updater appointed to help manage this risk, and I hope that this will improve these matters going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm afraid I'm being a little bit complimentary today, unfortunately, but there we are, fortunately. But by and large, obviously, this risk and the risk register and assurances, therefore, following on from that, have been something that we've been looking at very closely as a committee for so many years, and even well before you became chairman, Madam Chairman. And I think really the point that we're getting to now, where effectively we're going to have senior officers come in to report to us in terms of assurance, in terms of risk, not just seeing the risks and the figures that Richard's producing, I think is going to be very beneficial and will really give us the opportunity to make sure that this is properly scrutinised. So I'd just like to thank you for the work that you've done driving this forward, together with Adam and Richard as well, and I'm sure it's going to really play a very important part in the work that we do going future and going forward in the future. And it's something that I'm personally really pleased to see, and I'm sure the rest of the committee members are as well, in that sense that we can have that sort of level of assurance coming forward, hopefully. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paxton. Councillor Leslie Bolton, your hand's still up.
Sorry, I forgot to put it down.
Thank you, Leslie. Are there any other comments on the report? No other comments? Again, I just want to say again, Richard, you know, this is a huge improvement, and I think seeing hearing that the training is taking place on the 25th of May is the platform, I think, for moving forward at some pace. And obviously with the officers and the directors coming into the audit committee to give that level of assurance and make it more live and more real for members. And we hopefully, when we put the annual report together for next year, there will be no issues or sort of concerns expressed around risk management. So that would be the aim for us as a committee, I think. But thank you again, Richard, for your work. And also thank you to Gordon as well. We quite rightly mentioned his name, and I think that should be reflected in the minutes because he has done a considerable amount of work for you.
Thank you, Chair.
So we've been asked to review the
Information.
Oh, it's for information, this one. Okay then. Thank you. If we move on to the next item on the agenda. Just bear with me. Which is agenda item 9, the annual governance statement. Is this you, Richard,
yes.
Or is it Adam?
It's me, Chair.
Okay. Can I just, before you start, Councillor Leslie Wharton is the audit representative on the governance group. Would you like to say anything as an introduction, Leslie, or would you like to comment after?
Let me comment afterwards. Thanks.
Okay. Richard, if you can take us through this governance statement, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The report on the annual governance statement can be found by the appendix, starting on page 124 of your papers, and I'll just take the committee through the main sections. The framework for good governance in the public sector, published by SIPFA and Solace, introduces 7 principles, and they are set out within paragraph 2.3. And the annual governance statement reports on how the council has complied with those principles. A range of different internal and external sources of information and evidence were used to inform the draft of the statement, and its development was overseen by the annual governance group, which is led by the Deputy Chief Executive and also includes members such as the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer, myself, and Simon also attends in an advisory capacity. And of course, we have Councillor Leslie Walton as the representative of Audit Committee. Members should note that the preparation and the issues set out within the statement were and continue to be affected by the pandemic. But the governance officers continue to maintain effective controls, and this has been stated within the statement itself. Looking at the page numbers, firstly on the left-hand side of the margin, looking at 127 to 133, that sets out the 7 good governance principles and how the council meets each of them. And the diagram, which can be seen on page 134, illustrates the different forms of internal and external assurance on compliance to the principles which are set out within the statement. These are then described in more detail on pages 135 to 157, and this constitutes the majority of the statement. This part of the statement includes the internal sources of assurance, with information on the work of the monitoring officer, the Section 151 officer, the Chief Internal Auditor, and then on pages 146 to 150, the work of the Audit Committee. External sources of assurance from our regulators, that can be seen on pages 150 to 152. The work of Cabinet, Council and committees in providing assurance, including the work of scrutiny, that can be seen on pages 152 to 157. Pages 157 to 163 then provide a status update on the significant governance issues that were identified in last year's annual governance statement, and then the significant governance issues identified for action during the forthcoming year are found on pages 163 to 164. And note on page 163, the actions and timescales for addressing these issues still depends very much on how the pandemic pans out. And that summarises the statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Leslie, do you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to confirm to the committee that, in my opinion, the process has been carried out in a very robust fashion. And considering the huge difficulties over the last year, I think that's all credit to everybody who's been involved in the process. The actual process very sensibly stuck very much to how it's been done in the past, which has been quite successful anyway. It didn't seem to be sensible to change that, and all 4 directorates have completed the paperwork that was required, and so that I'm happy to support the draft governance statement that's been put together. I think that's all I really want to say for the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leslie. I've got some hands coming up. I've got a couple of questions, but if we can take comments from members first. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. In paragraph 12.1, you say that reports, in some instances, reports from 2019-20 have been used because the 2021 reports aren't available, and I'm a bit concerned because 2021 is an exceptional year that covers COVID, and there could be impacts on governance that haven't been reflected in this statement. I was wondering what your feelings are on that, and also if statements are reports are regularly not available to feed into the governance statement, can timetables be changed to ensure that in future years they do concur with the governance statement timetable?
Richard, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, we use the reports which are available to us during the production of the governance statement, and unfortunately there are some reports, particularly some of the reports from our external regulators, which are not available during this time period. It's not ideal, but we do have to work with what we have in front of us, and if the reports are available, then of course we will use them. But some of these things are not always directly within our control, unfortunately.
Would they be able to provide interim reports to you?
Maybe that's something that we can certainly explore with them, yes.
Thanks. And what about going forward? Would timetables be able to be changed?
It's difficult to change the timetable, largely because the production of the statement has to coincide with the production of the annual statement of accounts. So that makes it a little bit difficult in terms of, adjusting the timescales. But we certainly review it and see if there is any scope to do that.
Sorry, I meant for the reports feeding into the governance statement, if there's any opportunity to change their timetables to ensure that they are available.
The statement can be obviously amended up until this point. So if reports do become available, then we can take them into account. We just have to bear in mind what other meetings are available. For example, we had to prepare the statement in time for the audit committee today. But we will have a short period of time where we can review the content, and if reports are available, then of course we can review them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Richard, just for clarification, how are we identifying risks that have not been looked at previously, might have been missed by the report? Is there actions in place to look at any potential risks that should have been included and could be included in the future? I'm looking at the overview of this now and making sure that we have got the governance in place to assure the committee that these risks, potential risks, will be included next time.
Yes, I mean, during the risk management process itself, all the risks are kept under review. And when we come to the process to develop the annual governance statements, the key source documents that we use are the senior management assurance statements. So those documents capture the key risks that have been live during the year, and then these are subsequently incorporated within the following edition of the annual governance statement. And of course, any risks which are live are managed through the Council's risk management framework.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, and I'm in danger of doing what the other members have done and just thanking everybody like an award speech. But I think in terms of this document and pulling it together, as chair of the group, all the chair does is pull the strands, really. It's the team around me that bring all this together. And I just want to thank everyone for their commitment in achieving this document during what has been a horrendous year for everyone concerned, not just in terms of COVID, but the implications of COVID and people having different working regimes, having home care support that they've had to pick up. It's a myriad of things. And I know we often just thank people in difficult times, but, I think it's a testament to in this report in terms of what the council has actually done and achieved in order to be able to turn this round. And a final thanks really just to Leslie, because it really has been beneficial having Leslie on this group to give that political challenge, but also that wider challenge. And I think that was a really good move in terms of having a member on this group in order to give a different perspective, and Leslie's done that extremely well, and it would be remiss of me not to thank her personally for her input and challenge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There are no other questions. I've got a couple of points. If I could just pick up a few to check for me, please, Richard. On page 132, Principle F, at the bottom of that first column, you talk about the Audit Committee regular review of risk. You make reference to a paragraph, which I think is from last year's statement. So you may want to check that one. Yeah.
Yes, okay, thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Then under paragraph 6 on page 136, you talk about during 1819 and the Standards Committee work at paragraph 6.3, and again at paragraph 6.4 you talk about reference to 2018-19. I'm not quite sure if those dates need changing or not. Perhaps you could check that one.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
And at paragraph 711, there are some financial figures that need to be updated. Obviously, that will need to be completed before it goes to council. Just bear with me slightly. Moving on to page 159, obviously the committee is concerned around workforce and workforce capacity and resilience. I've had confirmation from the Chief Exec this morning that he's taking that issue forward as we speak. So that should improve over the next few months. There should be some decisions. Obviously, the risk management is referenced on page 161 as an action going forward. And other than that, I haven't seen anything else. So we've been asked to review the governance statement prior to approval by the council, which will form part of the statement of accounts. Councillor Bolton. Hand is up.
Thanks, Chair. My apologies. I did mean to just raise one point on the page, Principle B, where it refers to engaging stakeholders. I missed this in previous meetings, but I did wonder if we should be mentioning co-production. I know we haven't actually put together a formalised policy, but we've certainly been working on it, and certain areas, departments, directorates of the council have in fact started using the principle of co-production. So I do think it's another thing that we can say we are actually using to engage in the public in what we do.
I agree with that, Leslie. Can you consider that, Richard, please?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, apologies, I didn't spot it before. I was just rereading this yesterday and it suddenly sort of hit me, so I'd appreciate that. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions, then can we take a vote as to approval for this document for the council, please?
Okay, Councillor Peter Black. Councillor Peter Black.
Sorry, 4. Sorry, just couldn't unmute then. 4.
Julie Davis.
4.
Councillor David Hennywell.
4.
Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Paxton Hood Williams.
4.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
4.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Chair.
4.
Councillor Sam Prichard.
4.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
4, and thank you, Adam, for his thank you.
And Councillor Mike White.
4.
Thank you. That's approved.
Thank you very much. The next item and agenda item 11 are both for information. If we can take the tracker report first, and again, thank you, Jeremy, for updating the tracker. We've still got some actions which are ongoing, but we've got dates within the status column as to when we're going to receive those reports. So I didn't want to comment any more on that unless there are any comments by any members. That's for information. With regards to agenda item 11, this is the work plan. The work plan will now need further update to reflect the new terms of reference that was approved earlier. So hopefully we can aim to do that by the next meeting, if that's possible. So that we've got a future work plan which will pick up and ensure that we've got an agenda for each of the meeting which will satisfy the terms of reference. There's one thing that we have to pick up as a committee, and that's a more formal review of the effectiveness of the committee. And Jeremy and I were talking earlier on before the committee started, and we're going to approach the Audit Wales because they facilitated sessions for us previously to see whether they can do something. So if any members have got any ideas of how we could review effectiveness, whether that would be by a session led by Audit Wales, or whether they could produce something by way of questionnaire, I'd be grateful. And if you could filter any suggestions through to Jeremy, and I'm sure Jeremy and Hugh can sort something out with Adam's support. So if there are nothing else, if there are no other comments on any of those papers, I'm not seeing any hands. Can I once again thank everyone for your attendance today and your participation, and please stay safe and enjoy a little bit of freedom. Thank you very much. Committee ends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.